You said we haven't talked in a while. How do you feel about this schedule and this everything?
I like the schedule. I don't like the confusion with it and how it doesn't make sense.
So you're confused too. It's not just me.
FIVB, okay. I'm very confused, and I just have to like separate myself because there's so much dialogue about it. I don't think it's good. Like overall, we're not in a good place with that FIVB schedule. Obviously, if you're in the top 16 and those events run the way that they're planning on it, it's great. But it just, they have to figure out the challenger system of it. But I want to see the system actually run. They just have to run the system that they propose. Right now, they have a good system in place, I think, and they just haven't filled it with the challenger events.
I know, 'cause I saw they put a couple futures events up. I saw that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, I think if you look at it from a promoter's point of view, I think it's hard to put on a challenger event, right? Because I think a challenger is probably just as expensive as an Elite 16. Because while the prize money might be lower, you're almost tripling the field because an Elite 16 at the moment doesn't have a qualifier.
So the infrastructure might even be bigger,
right?
Or more.
So you have more hotels, more staffing. Then you have a 32-team qualifier, which is expensive, and you have to have more courts, which is more permits. The insurance is higher. Like the costs are astronomically higher.
Oh, geez.
For a challenger. So the costs are probably the same, but you can't market the fact that we have the top athletes because if you're a smart Elite 16 player, like you're probably not going to take the chance of laying an egg in a challenger and getting then booted from the Elite 16. So then the promoter can't market the fact that we have the best volleyball players in the world playing in this challenger. That's a really expensive event to promote. So why don't we just either put on an Elite 16 or a Future? Future is really cheap to put on. You can say we have the best up-and-coming talent, whereas the challenger is just like this weird middle ground
group,
So I don't know,
maybe there should just be 2 levels
like it used to be. All the players seem to love the Grand Slam Open.
I loved it.
Like why do you think that went away? I've been really curious about that.
That's a good point,
because that was
I freaking love that.
All the players, like in that huge group chat, all the players seem to love it. Like why don't we just go back to this system of Grand Slams and Opens? And that was before I started playing, so I have no idea why it would have gone away.
We had way more Grand Slams back then, way more top-tier events, and the money was insane. And then the Opens were decent. Like you show up to an Open, you're not like as stoked because Grand Slams are so good, but it was fine. It was like a 3-star.
Do you think that it would have had to have done with? Was it hard for an up-and-coming player to get in? Is that probably why they changed it to the star system to make it easier for younger players to break in?
Yeah.
Because that would make sense, because I would have no idea how someone would break in.
Do other sports have like, I mean, Futures is, it kind of feels like a youth, like you're paying to the extent where like it almost seems like you expect the parents to pay for it.
Right.
Right?
Because you're not going to make enough money to, well, at least
granted,
traveling from the U.S.
You're going to get legit athletes because
Yeah.
people have to tap into it. Like you're going to have to play them. But it just feels like Futures is like, I don't know, like 16-year-olds and
the name is funny.
That's kind of what it feels like.
Yeah.
Even
though that's the tier I'm in, and I'm 31.
Yeah, right. You're going to be forced to kind of play in it.
Yeah.
No,
I've had a lot of people ask me, like, is Futures for the youth? And I said, I hope not. Or I'm screwed.
You're going to be that one adult there playing with kids. I want the gold.
They give you, like, sparkling apple ciders.
Yeah, Martinelli's just spraying it there.
So I think when I looked at the AVP schedule, I feel like they developed the 3-tier system in a way better. They did what the FIVB is trying to do, just better.
Because
it makes sense.
Their qualifying series, which I don't like the names. Their
Yeah.
qualifying series is the Tour series, which
Yeah.
is like confusing the fans.
Yeah.
We always love to confuse them. But it's like an actual, that's the qualifying
You can
series.
get paid to go qualify.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? That's
Right.
really
You can
cool.
get, exactly, yeah. And it's a true qualifying series. And then they separate the rest of them, but really Gold Series, Pro Series is one thing. The Gold's just 3 bigger events.
Yeah.
I do have a question. So are the Tour Series just to qualify for the Pro Series, or are there Tour Series that get you to qualify for the Gold ones as well?
No.
Both,
Pro,
I think.
See, I don't know.
The Pro Series will qualify you for the Gold Series, right?
Okay.
I think that
it is like
I think each stop, the Pro and Gold Series, have one wild card spot reserved for a winner of a corresponding Tour Series event. So if you win, I don't think they've figured out what correlates to what, but say if you win Seaside, you would get into Chicago. Yeah. That's what it was last year. Yeah. And I think that's still the case.
Yeah.
And then I think
I remember that.
And then they're coming out with a schedule of AVP Next. I think it's actually supposed to release tomorrow, the schedule.
There's going to be
I think there's
AVP Next.
6 or 7 AVP Next with a minimum of 20 grand of prize money in each.
I thought AVP Next was the Tour Series.
So the AVP Tour Series is basically the AVP Next Golds. So there were AVP Next Golds. That was that Atlantic City one that you and Trevor were going to run.
Now I'm not confused.
Yeah. So the AVP Next Golds were like the big dog AVP Next that were getting big enough where they now wrap them in the professional umbrella. Yeah. And then so now you have standard AVP Next that are just with more prize money. I mean, if you're like an amateur or up and coming player, I was talking to Tim about this today, you'll have about 20 decent paying events of like 400 grand of total prize money to play for.
Including the top ones, you mean?
No, just like AVP Tour Series, AVP Next, and then there's like random, there's promoters all over the country that'll put on like 10, 20, 30 grand tournaments.
I'm going to a couple one in March in Dallas, I think that's 10K, and one in May in San Antonio, which is 20K. And I think, I don't even know if those are AVP Next events.
The one in Dallas is a Texas volleyball tour.
And then the one in May maybe is AVP Next.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. So
I like
there's
it. It sounds
opportunities
great.
all over the place.
It sounds great.
So there are a couple people were asking. They were saying, do you think that having those 2 Pro Series events first is going to screw over people like me who don't have enough points to get in, but there will be. You're saying there will be AVP Next that will allow you to get into that.
They're going to have AVP Next that will serve as satellite qualifiers.
Okay.
Huh.
Which I think is amazing. I think the day before main draw qualifiers were like as fun of a tradition as it was, and what an amazing feeling it was to qualify. It was brutal because you play 4 matches. You come in the next day, you don't sleep, you get the 1 seed, you get shellacked, you like try to take a nap, and then you get murdered again and your day's over. You make barely any money. Whereas if you're playing in a satellite qualifier, you're playing in AVP Next, say you get 9th and above, you're still making money. You're playing way more matches. It's not single elimination.
You're playing a true tournament format too. You're not just playing this one day like free for all.
Yeah.
Like you're getting reps playing an event, but also winning an event. Mm-hmm. Like you're getting used to like I'm the champion of this entire event that's being put on.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good thing for anyone up and coming.
And then you rest. You come into a professional event fresh.
Yep.
Prepared for that event.
Plus, you know the draws earlier because there's no qualifiers. So now you're rested, studying your opponents, hopefully, scout them.
And it's a win for the AVP because, I mean, qualifiers are massive expenses with no return on that. Yeah. There's no way. And so now, like, they're putting on separate tournaments. And now the AVP is going to be able to market the field so much earlier. So here are our matchups
we have
30 days prior to the event.
Plus, other fans, let's say you win Denver. Wasn't Denver one of them?
Denver is one of them, yeah.
You win Denver. Everyone that watched Denver is like, that was really fun to watch. We watched the whole event, and we saw the champion win. Mm-hmm. Now I want to go see them play in the main draw. Not like, oh, they're the one like lower team that somehow scraped in here and is going to get smashed today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, so I
think it's cool.
I think it's great. I think it's an awesome system.
Yeah, a lot of people. I think a lot of people are just confused because there's a couple questions on like, is this going to help or hinder up and coming players? And I think from what it seems like, it's going to help us because the qualifier's so brutal to fly somewhere and
what are the downsides to it? Obviously, it's like seems like a little bit of a easier. Like everyone has a chance for each one. Like I got a shot. You know, you're getting like a shot at it. But what are the other downsides?
Well, I think people were originally freaking out. One, because there were no AVP Next prior to the first 2.
Right.
I think that's the biggest panic.
People were freaking out that like, well, we're locked out of those 2 events.
Yeah.
But that's already being atoned for.
Right.
And then I think that change is just hard to accept at first, especially when it's kind of confusing.
Yep.
And I think it'll probably take maybe this whole year for people to really understand how it works.
Yeah.
And so I think people were just like anytime Facebook or Instagram changes, screen.
No,
it's
like,
this
so
is stupid.
True.
Why'd they put a button there?
Yeah, and then 2 days later, they're like, oh, these Instagram stories are sick.
Cool.
You
Oh my gosh, I remember
Change
when
is just
Instagram
hard.
stories came out.
And it takes a second. So I think people didn't understand it at first and were kind of maybe a little confused. And we're like, well, how am I going to get in? But I think it is also the barrier to entry is maybe getting a little bit higher. And I think that's just a sign of a healthy sport.
Yeah.
You know, in 2013, when it was the first year that Donald ran a full schedule, there were women who could just sign up for the main draw and be in. There's no qualifier.
No way. Oh.
And now we're looking at it where the qualifiers started to be capped, and then they went to 2 days, and now they got so big that they have to run huge off tournaments for them. And sure, the barrier to entry might be higher, but I think that's just the sign of a healthy sport.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you look at, if we're going to play sports roulette, you know, qualifying for the PGA Tour is really freaking hard because there's a ton of golfers.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just sign up for an open tryout for the Clippers, right? The higher the barrier to entry is, the more professional the sport's getting because it's just being played at a higher level.
Which is very exciting.
And I think that's awesome. And as like being a professional beach volleyball player, I think the harder it gets, the more special it's going to be.
Exactly.
And so I think it's a good sign. And I think it is a little bit harder, which is like, you know, there's some give and take because it's a bummer because it's harder to make it in the main draw. But at the same time,
the value of the thing you're fighting for is getting
that much higher.
Is getting much bigger and better. Yeah. So if you do make it, you finally do, now you're making a living.
Yeah.
Just for being in the main draw, which is like kind of the goal of the tour. Like we want to get back to that where back in the day there's these guys, like I heard their names and I heard they were good players and I look and they've never gotten better than a ninth. And they made great living back in the day. Mm-hmm. And they were like volleyball household names. And nowadays, like you barely get any recognition for a ninth.
Yeah.
So that's the goal.
I'm excited. I'm impressed with the system that they came out with, and I think that there will probably be kinks to work out like any brand new system under new ownership, and it's pretty audacious like what they came out with. And you've been talking about having a tour championship since we started this podcast,
right?
And they have one.
A little different than I was saying.
How does it work? Do you know?
There's like 6 teams or something, isn't there?
It's a 6-team invitational.
Okay.
And I think only 4 are in automatic, and 2 wild cards are reserved.
Okay.
I guess if, you know, let's say April's not in there because she didn't play or something like that, you know, they can give it to April. Okay. But you got to think it's the top 6 teams at the end of. Oh no, actually, sorry. The championships is 6 teams, and they take your best 2 out of the 3 Gold Series events. So that's their, I guess, more incentive for you to play in the Gold Series too.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I just wonder is it a championship or is it another event? Like,
That's a good question.
Like, are you the champion?
Yeah.
Because I want a champion.
Because that is
at the end of the year. You don't have to give me a ring, but I want a ring or a trophy saying you're the champion. Yeah. You know, you won the whole tour.
You did the best this
season, and when that doesn't exist.
I think they're calling it the Tour Championships.
I think they are too.
They always called Huntington was the champ. I won the championships in Huntington. True. I wasn't the champion. I didn't even get to bring the check home. They just take the trophy back from you. Chicago was our championship, right? For years.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
Championship, okay, but what's the difference?
But at least this has a different format with a different name.
I suggested, while we had the call with the AVP, I threw it out there. I was like, is there a champion at the end of the year?
Yeah.
I think that was cool too. Cool. The Zoom was cool that they allowed everyone to hop in and ask questions.
Yeah, so someone from Bally's was on it, and then Al was on it, who's the new CEO of AVP. Mm-hmm. And I mean, just like energy vibe-wise, there
were a bunch of people hopping in the chat and asking questions, and they were answering questions. And so I think that's cool.
Yeah, I think we're in good hands with Bally.
In a good spot.
The whole betting thing, that's another question I asked. So there's not a tour champion. I was trying to say, like, maybe we could do something like FedEx, you know?
Yeah.
The FedEx Cup in golf.
Yeah.
End of the year, there's a FedEx Cup champ. But they're like, if there's a sponsor that wanted to do that, then we'd do that.
Yeah.
I get that. The other thing I asked was, is there going to be gambling? And he said that we just got to work our way to getting there. And first, they need to collect a lot of data on the sport, like over this first season, to figure out how it would work and how to implement it. And then But their goal is totally to implement sports betting and whatnot.
I love it.
Yeah. Might take a year or two, though.
Yeah. I guess we probably have to sign waivers that we can't bet.
Exactly.
Damn it.
Exactly.
Like, shoot.
That's all the stuff they got to figure out.
Yeah.